Okay, so let me just make sure the audio sounds good before I get started here. Give me just a second to hear myself. 1 second. 1 second. Okay, so there it is. So actually, as it turns out, I started working on this app and I thought I was live streaming and I wasn't. So that's why I'm late. This whole time I was actually live. I thought I was live streaming and I wasn't. So that sucks. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what it is I'm doing, and I'm going to start over and I'm going to explain how far I got. And I'm going to kind of talk about my first impressions so far, and then I'm just going to start from scratch and get this thing going. So ignore the Angular docs. That was something from earlier. Okay, so the reason I'm doing this is because I've never used Vue.js before. I have no idea how to use Vue.js. Before today, I had never even read Vue.js code. I've never even been to the Vue.js doc site other than to get the logo for the thumbnail for this video. So no idea how to use Vue.js. Okay, and I wanted to learn Vue.js, and I wanted to do it live so that people who might be interested in learning Vue.js, who are familiar with React or vanilla JavaScript or Angular, you might get an idea of what it's like for someone to have a fresh perspective and the initial thoughts of someone using this framework. Or it's not a framework, it's a library. So that's why I'm doing it. What I'm doing is a to-do app, and the reason why I'm doing a to-do app is because it's such a basic app that lets you access so many different features of the framework without getting too advanced, but still accessing enough to be able to assess the framework in a good enough way to form an opinion. So how far did I get? So anybody who's familiar with Vue.js may know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, it's perfectly fine if you don't. This is how far I got. I started off with just injecting Vue.js as a CDN at the top using a script and just writing everything inside of an index.html file. And I realized pretty quickly that that was not the way that people do Vue.js apps. And I found that out because I kept trying to figure out how to do certain things, and I would look and I would see that the code examples were written in this template syntax. And I was like, whoa, cool, what's this template syntax? And then I found out that there's a Vue.js CLI, and that's the way that most people do things, kind of similar to React in the way that Create React App is the way that most people are familiar coding in React. Vue.js has the Vue CLI. So what I did was I stopped what I was doing in the vanilla JavaScript stuff. I didn't get very far. And I created a boilerplate to do Vue app that I have here on the left. And I created like one file, and I was figuring out how to do stuff before I realized I was not streaming. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm still figuring things out. I'm going to go ahead and scrap everything I've got. Other than any changes I may have made to this file, no, we'll go ahead and get rid of this and this and this. So now we should just have a pretty much like empty page, right? I think I'm running it. So let's go to it. And I want to say it's 8080. Okay. So I just want to quickly say my first impressions on Vue.js so far before I actually get started in the code again. At first, when I was doing the vanilla JavaScript style where you just import the CDN through a script at the top, I was like, man, I don't really see the benefit of Vue.js, to be honest, over vanilla JavaScript, and especially over something like React. But then when I switched over to doing things the CLI way, so far I get it. It seems like it has a lot of similarities to React, and kind of like Angular as well. It's almost like a fusion of the two, and in terms of the way you code in it. And my thoughts so far is that I like it, but I still think so far I would just always go towards React first. Maybe it's just because I'm more familiar with it. I don't know. But yeah, I'm just going to keep going forward and just keep displaying my thoughts as I go. So I'm going to get my console up so that we can at least see what's going on. So a to-do app. One component we're going to want to have, obviously, is a to-do item. And that's appended with a .vue file, which is interesting because as far as I'm aware, out of the big three framework libraries sort of setups, Angular, React, and Vue, Vue is the only one that has its own file name. Now, React uses JSX, but that has nothing to do with React. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So I'm going to copy this boilerplate code over to my to-do item. And I'm going to rename this from hello world to to-do item. We don't need this to be a string or a message. Here, let's say text. And that will be a string. And to-do will have a text. And to-do will have completed, which is a Boolean. And we want to rename this to to-do item. Yeah. Okay. I think that's good. Inside of my app.vue, which appears to be the same thing as like an app.jsx in React, you know, the highest order component of the app, I'm going to get rid of this logo and probably get rid of it from the assets folder as well. In fact, I'm just going to get rid of the assets folder completely. Okay, it didn't like that because I forgot to save this. Okay, is it because I have to at least render one item inside of here? Indeed. Okay, so instead of rendering a div, obviously I want to render my to-do item. And I want to pass in the text of test to do, and then completed. Is it complete or completed? Completed is going to be equal to false. And I figured the last thing I figured out before I realized I wasn't streaming was that in order for me to pass in like false or an array or something like that without it being a string, you have to append the variable name with this v. What was it again? V bind, I think v bind. And yeah, so I have to import the component as well. So probably want to import it here. So import to do item from components / to do item. See if it stops complaining here. For sure, it is not. To do item is not defined. Oh, it's defined but never used. Oh, I have to put it here. Okay, so it wants me to put it here first. Okay, now if I refresh, do I get the warnings? No warnings. Fantastic. So I guess inside of this to-do item, I should probably render the text, right? And I think this is what the template syntax was. Yep. Okay. Sweet. So before I go any further, I'm going to create another component, to-do list.vue. Yeah. I'm going to copy this over, paste this in, call this to-do list, and rename this to list. And we're not going to pass in this stuff. Instead, we're going to pass in a list of to-dos, which is going to be an array. Can we do array? I think we can do an array. I'm basing it off the fact that the syntax is not ugly. So what we want to do is make sure that we, in the app.vue, we probably want to render that instead of the to-do item. Can I comment that out? I don't know. I'm going to cut this because we're going to want to use that, but we'll use it inside of the to-do list instead of here. And so we want to import the to-do list from to-do list instead of the item, obviously. All right. So to-do list, and we're going to pass in a list of to-dos. but we don't have a list of to-dos yet. But how about we pretend we have a list of to-dos? And in order to pass in an array, I think we also have to do the vbind thing. And then we can literally pass in an array. And I'll just throw in a hard-coded to-do just to see if this thing works. And we'll say text. Probably need to make sure I don't use the, oh gosh, the wrong quotes here. In fact, I'll use the double quotes on the outside and the single quotes on the inside. Okay, so the text for the to-do is learn Vue, and completed is obviously false because I'm still learning Vue. Okay, I don't see any errors, so we can probably go inside of our to-do list, and now we have our list of to-dos inside of this component, but the question is, how do we render them out? And I was just Googling how to do that, so let's see. Vue.js template for loop. For loop inside template, the syntax is v4. And then you pass in. Okay. It's pretty standard stuff. Let's say v4, right? v4 equals, and this is where it's kind of similar to Angular. But anyway, to do of to-dos, and then we can probably do to-do.text. But it's not liking the syntax. You have to do vbind? Hold on. What is this colon key thing? How confusing is that? The answer is pretty confusing, that's for sure. Vbind, what? Okay, so the code that I'm looking at here doesn't, oh, I see, you have to pull out index, like this. Is that better? That is working. Awesome. Awesome. So can I give it a class name here? What I'll probably do instead is make this the container of each to do. So give it a class name or a class to do item container. And then the actual, oops, oh no. Man, that's lame. All right, my VS Code messed up a little bit, but to do item container. And inside of here, I guess I'll put another div. That way we can give it a enabled or disabled class name. I don't know, can I add a class to what I'm looping through? I mean, a dynamic class based off of logic within the v4 loop? Maybe I should try that, just for the heck of it. I'll try it in a second. So class, wait, can we even do logic for class names? Like, let's look that up. Vue.js conditional class. Hey, it knew what I was gonna ask. That's weird, right? That's weird. Google knew what I was gonna ask. How weird is that? Anyway, let me just stare at this for a second and think. Okay. So we just add a colon here, and then in here we're gonna say is equal to, what is this colon? Is this just short for vbind? So I think the colon must just be like syntactic sugar for vbind. So can I just go into here and get rid of this whole vbind thing and just leave the colon? What do you know? I kind of like that. That's all right. I like that. Cool. Anyway, so class, so condition, let's say to do dot completed. And if it's completed, we'll give it a completed class. Otherwise, we'll say incomplete. And I'm going to get rid of the D here just because I want to use the same spelling. So let's look here. If I right click, it has the incomplete class. So that is working. So if a to-do is complete, so let's say the class is complete, if it has the complete class, let's do text decoration. What is it? Line through, I think. Let's test it by doing the opposite. What's the problem? Is it not line through? Text, oh, text deck oration. There we go. Okay, there we go. Now we get the line through. Perfect. So, either way, any to-do should have some basic styles, such as a padding of 10 pixels. Whoa, I don't get my autocomplete here for CSS. Anyway, border 1 pixel solid black, margin bottom 10 pixels, and cursor pointer. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, it's supposed to be to-do item. To-do item container. And obviously I'm not digging this like massive width here. So let's set the width to be 500 pixels maybe. And the to-do list, I'm dumb. The to-do item styles should go inside of to-do item. My bad. So margin and auto. Yeah, so I'm gonna move this, like these to-do specific styles into to-do item right now. So complete and incomplete is gonna be inside of here. And so we'll also do incomplete. Not that it's gonna have any unique styles, but to do, instead of calling this to do item container, I'm gonna call it to do list. And then obviously we can call this to do list instead of to do item container up here. And then this stuff, instead of rendering that out, I'm gonna render that here. And I'm going to make sure that in here, instead of rendering that stuff, I say to do item. So we're gonna render the actual component. The text, and I'm guessing we need to use this bind thing, or maybe we don't. Not for a string, but we're using a variable. So colon text is equal to do dot text, and then completed, don't forget the colon, is equal to do dot completed. I feel like that's the one. Except for the fact that we need to pass in to-dos. We are. To-do item, blah, 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 to-do list, we're passing in completed and text, completed text, boolean, text, we don't want that, we want this. And we have to import it. Probably right. And then we have to add it to this components object. To do item. Save that. Cannot read property text of undefined. From inside to do item. Yeah, it should be just text. Cool. There it is. And inside of here, I forgot to get rid of the, we don't want that. And we want to make sure that to-do item class gets the styles that I kind of had here, thinking that I was inside of this file. All right. Now just give it that class. Now the question is, can I give, well, let's do this. Okay, then we just got to give it the border. Border 1 pixel solid black. Boom. So now we have that, and I'm just going to give it a background color of gray. And a color of white because the black was not working. Awesome. And a border radius just for the heck of it. 3 pixels. All right. Okay. Making some progress here. So instead of getting the to-dos and hard coding them, we're going to want to get them from local storage. So Vue.js methods. I remember finding earlier something about, okay, so you create a method inside this object. So we create a methods object, methods, and then we will say get initial to-dos. We'll call that get initial to-dos, I guess. Can we do an arrow function? I'm assuming we can. And we're gonna say const save to-dos is equal to local storage get item to-dos. And obviously we're gonna want the json.parse version of that. So saved to-dos, and then we're gonna want to return that. So we can actually, we can pretty much just resolve this to one line. All right, so if I also remember correctly when reading earlier, there was lifecycle hooks, Vue.js lifecycle methods, lifecycle hooks. And I think you just create them on this this app like this. Mount, maybe? Mount? Mounted. Okay, mounted. So when the component mounts, let's log. Oh, and by the way, on the methods here, we're going to want to also say if we don't have any to-dos from local storage, we're going to want to return an empty array instead. So that's what I'll add there. So console.log this.get initial to-dos. Let's see if this works. Cannot read property get initial to-dos of undefined. Hold on. Give me just a second. Okay. So what's undefined? It says this is undefined. Well, why would that be undefined? Is it because, oh, you know what? I know what it is. Okay, so let's not use arrow functions because that skews, that sort of messes things up. Let's just put it that way. I think that's what it is. Let me convert this over to a non-arrow function as well. So a function declaration. And gotta make sure we spell function right. All right. So json.parsed is not a function. Obviously it's not. It should be parse. This is what happens when you lose your autocomplete. Excellent. So we get the empty array. So that's working. So we need to create an input and a button that lets us submit and create new to-dos. Let's do that. Components, new file, add to do dot view. Throw in my boilerplate here. And we'll get rid of that. And so the input, how do we want to do this? We don't need an input. So add to do. No, we don't need to import anything for this. Awesome. So add to do. I don't think it needs any props. And we can call this add to do container. And we're not going to want to do that, that's for sure. So I'll start from here and say add to do container. We want to return two things. We want, or render two things, an input, and we want to render a button. The button is going to say add to do, and the input is, whoops, type text. Let's give them both a class and class input so that we can quickly give them some padding. Yeah, and the button should also have some padding. Let's say outline none and border 0 pixels. And I see this little error thing right here. It says X invalid end tag. Ah, forgot an I. Okay. So I just want to make sure that this renders on the screen before I get the logic going. So let's go ahead and make sure that we import this into our app.view. So this is add to do, and that's coming from component / add to do. Make sure we add that to here. So far, this is making some sense, I think. Add to do, and it doesn't take any props, so we should be good. Okay, looks like that is good. I just want to make it the same width as the to-do list. So to-do list had, well, the to-do items has a list of 500 pixels, so I'll steal that. Oh, add to do container and margin auto, and let's set the input. Actually, better yet, let's make this display flex. Set the input to flex 1. There we go. Looks like there's still some space on the outside here. Or is this just breaking out of the, that's probably what it is. Let's make this box sizing border box to see if that gets rid of the, there we go, perfect. That looks good. Margin bottom 25 pixels. And now we have a decent looking setup. Okay, cool. So we have a decent looking setup, but now we have to this is breaking my brain, man. I'm learning it as fast as I can. Okay, so now we have to reference. We need a reference to this input in our JavaScript in the add to do. How do we do that? How do we do that? That is a good question. Let's Google it. Vue.js. What do I even Google? Vue.js reference element, or you know, like just get input value. See what this. and put v bind value. Value equals something. V on. Ooh, that's weird. Here, let me look at a different example. V model. Fascinating. So let's create a data thing here. And what do we want to call that? Just like to do text and set equal to an empty string. And then we want to say value equals to do text. Okay, but I'm getting a, it says data property and a component must be a function. In your view model, input ID v model. Oh, v model. So it should be like this, v model. No, it still doesn't like that. That should not have been a 1, by the way. That was pretty silly. But yeah, what is this talking about? Data property in component must be a function? Object declaration on data property is deprecated. Using function declaration instead. Well, that's not what I just read there, although that was old. Data binding Vue.js. Oops. That says V1. Give me V2 or something. I don't know. Show me the data binding. Man, not letting me. Not giving me a break here, is it? Data binding expressions, JavaScript expressions, directives, vbind, data bind. So I'm sort of confused. How do I bind data in Vue.js? In other words, I know how to interpolate the value because I'm getting text here, but I want to do it the other way now. I want to set the value of this input equal to to-do text. I thought I could do it this way, but this is saying, no, you can't do it that way. So how can I bind this data? Raw HTML attributes, binding expressions. I don't know what any of this terminology is in the context of Vue because this is my very first time using Vue. Vue.js 2.0 input value. Thanks a lot, Grepper. That helps literally none. Not form, well, V model. Okay, that's kind of what I'm doing. The problem is, well, gotcha. Wait, what? Okay. Okay. So far I've got it on the view side, but what about the model side? This is saying, how do I create the to-do text value? This is driving me insane. This should be like super easy to find on the documentation. Checked names. V model check names. That's what I'm doing. Is VS Code just data property and component must be a function? It's not a function anywhere else that I'm looking. nowhere else do I see it being a function. It's not that I don't believe it, because I do. I'm just trying to figure out what that's supposed to look like. Okay, well, I could say maybe it's a function that returns that, because I kind of doubt it. Is that what? Okay, well now it's not rendering that at all. Cannot read property emits options of null. So I didn't think so. I didn't think so. So I don't really understand what this is supposed to look like. Any Vue.js people in the chat? If I got some Vue.js masters or even noobs in the chat, throw me a suggestion, because I'm sort of confused. What I'm gonna have to do is look at an example app on GitHub or something and see if I can just find an example of someone doing this. Let's see. Maybe a comment? No, a comment would only be one-way data binding typically. Article actions, perhaps? Maybe this has none of these have an input. Article list, comment. That was the footer there. Pagination, v tag. None of these. Real world app, huh? Example apps. Here's a whole list of example apps. One of these has to have an input. Oh man. Okay, is that it? Okay, maybe that's it. Is that? Is this what you wanted? Hey, nice. Look at that. Figured it out. Okay, that's a little weird. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm gonna continue on. So when we click this button, we're gonna wanna have a method. So I guess that's where we throw in this methods thing. And don't tell me it needs to be a function, I swear. Methods, we're gonna say on submit, or like, we'll just say add to do. I like that. Is that the right syntax? I think so. Add to do. So what add to do is gonna do is it's gonna get the list of to-dos from here. So from local storage, sorry. It's gonna get that. So const saved to-dos is equal to this. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna take that array of to-dos, add in the current to-do, and then resave it. So we'll say const updated to-dos is equal to an array of ... saved to-dos, comma. I'm guessing it's like this to-do text, or would it be this data to-do text? We'll find out in a second. Let's just log it for now. Updated to-dos. Let's just see what happens here. This is a test. I need to call the function. So how would we call a click function on a button in Vue.js? Man, Vue.js click function button. Yeah, button. That thing. At click, really? I like that. If that works, I will dig that. Add to do. Whoa, hey, I kind of like that. Not gonna lie. At first I was talking smack about Vue, but I think I'd still definitely prefer React. I'm not gonna lie. But so far, at least I think Vue is a very viable framework. Okay. So we have this, but now let's go ahead and save the to-dos. So local storage dot set item json.stringify updated to-dos. So now that's going to save that. So since that's going to save that, we should no longer use this hard-coded array of to-dos, and we should probably say this dot to-do list, or this dot, oof. Maybe we should do a data thing and return initial to-dos, or maybe not initial to-dos, but just like to-dos, perhaps, and set that equal to this dot get initial to-dos. See what happens. vbind requires an additional attribute. Where is that? Oh, it's here. Oh, duh. To-dos. All right. So let's see if we can add a to-do. So this, we'll say learn Vue.js. Okay, failed to execute set item on storage. 2 arguments required, but only 1 present. Yeah, obviously. My bad. All right. Another thing is, like, I don't have any of my autocomplete on .vue files, so I'm gonna be forgetting some things here and there, but I'm getting used to it. So learn Vue.js. Whoa. JS. Boom. Did that work? I think it did. Let's refresh and see. Okay. So it definitely saved it, and it definitely recognized the fact that there was a to-do, but what it didn't do was pass in the to-do, and that is definitely because I didn't save the, okay, it's because I saved it incorrectly. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second if you don't already know. So let me clear my local storage. Instead of saving a to-do as just the text, I should be saving it as an object where text is this dot to do text, and then completed is obviously false because it's a brand new to do. So let me refresh this. Learn Vue.js, press add to do, refresh, and now we have a to do. Awesome. Okay, but now what we have to do is we have to be able to, when we add a to do, I want it to refresh immediately. And this is where I'm going to be like really confused because I have no idea how the communication between components works in Vue.js. And I don't think that's something I can just learn during a live stream, but maybe I can. I just don't want to bore you guys. But I know that I'm going to be confused here. So somehow I have to say to the parent component that a new to-do was added. And so this parent component needs to understand that and say, okay, a new to-do was added. Let me dig back into local storage and reset this to-dos variable. There's a couple ways I can think of off the top of my head to do that. And I don't know the Vue.js way of doing that. But what I am thinking in my head is, what if I passed in a function to this to-do list that says something like updated, and we pass in a function called, it would be here, that we'll just call updated, or better yet, yeah, let's just call it updated. Function, and let's just say this dot to-dos is equal to this dot get initial to-dos. So what this function does is it says this dot to-dos is equal to to-dos from local storage. And we're going to pass this function into our to-do list, or not our to-do list. We're going to pass it into our add to-do component. And that was called updated. So we have to accept that inside of add to do. And in order to accept that inside of add to do, we're going to go to props. So we need to create a props prop and accept updated. No? Oh, which is a function. Okay, I don't see any errors. So I guess when we do add to do, when we run that function, at the very end of this, after we save it to local storage, we should then say this dot updated. Whoa, what if that works? That would blow my mind. Okay, so blow my own mind. Hey, it worked. That worked. Awesome. But I also want to clear the input when I create a new to-do, because I don't want this to just be here. I don't want to manually have to clear this out every single time I create a new to-do. That'd be annoying. So I'm going to say this dot updated, and then directly afterwards, maybe this dot to do text is equal to an empty string. And also, by the way, to do items need to have a margin bottom. Let's just do 10 pixels. Let's give it some space. So say give it some space. And that works. That works. Okay. 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 So there's really only like one thing left, which is to complete a to-do. And I guess when you click on a to-do, that should effectively complete a to-do. So that would happen inside of add to-do. I'm sorry, to-do item. We need to add a click function to each to-do item. Yeah. And I'll just copy that. So instead of calling it add to do, obviously we're going to say complete to do, and we're going to have to add that function from inside of our methods object that we'll call complete to do, make that a function, and then set. This is where things get interesting, because I know there's a better state paradigm, and like a shared state paradigm for Vue.js where you can communicate between components, kind of like in React there's context, and in Angular there's services. I bet you there's a better way to communicate between components in Vue, but I definitely don't know that way. So all you Vue people, I apologize. Again, this is me learning Vue.js. I've never used it before. So just to defend myself from the YouTube commenters. Getting close to the end here. But what I've got to do is when you click on this, we're going to call this function, which is going to update the current to do and then save it. So we're going to have to pass in another function to this to do item from here. So let's do that. Ooh, we're gonna have to drill deeply into the to-do list. Bum deal. Okay, well, oh well. So we're gonna say complete to do, create a complete to do function, which I just realized, can I do it like this? Because if so, that's just a better way to do it. I think so. Yeah, that works fine. Cool. So we'll do it like that from now on. Less code, the better. All right, so complete to do, what that's going to do is it's going to accept a to do, and it's going to take the to do that it gets and then update the to dos via local storage. So const current to dos is equal to this dot get initial to dos. Then we will say const updated to dos is equal to and actually, I can put this inside of the to-do list to reduce code here. Sorry, I know I'm all over the place, but I'm kind of learning and coding at the same time. I'm figuring it out though. So we're going to throw this inside of the methods here. And then we're going to update local storage from here. And obviously this dot get initial to-dos doesn't exist here. So I'm just going to copy this line right here. So dot 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 current to-dos, and then the to-do, and then finally update local storage. So local storage dot set item to-dos, and we're going to say to updated to-dos. Now we just have to pass this complete to-do into our to-do item. Don't forget my colon. Set that equal to complete to-do. And that should do that. But then now I got to go inside of the to-do item, make sure that we accept it as a prop. So complete to-do. That's a function. And I don't think we're going to need that anymore. So complete to do. So when we call that, we're going to call complete to do, which is from the parent, which complete to do is going to get the current list of to dos, and it's going to update that list of to dos with the to do that we pass here, and then it's going to save that to local storage, and then we need to call updated. From the parent. So pass that here. To-do list takes updated. So at the very end of this, we'll say this dot updated. Okay. I think we're set. The only thing I have to do now is figure out how to pass the to-do into complete to-do. So like how can because I know that when I do this, I'm going to call complete to do. That's not the problem. What the problem is I want to pass the to do that I'm on into this function. So let's look at how we could possibly do that. And so we can literally just do it like this, I think. Ooh, you know what I just remembered? I realized we're gonna have to sorry, I'm thinking out loud, but we're gonna have to filter out the to-dos as well. Sorry. So inside of to-do list, where we're running this complete to-do. When we call updated to-dos, we're spreading out current to-dos, and then we're adding to-do to that, the one that we're passing here. If we do that, we're gonna add duplicates every single time we complete a to-do. We need to make sure that we remove the to-do and then add it back in. So current to-dos dot completed, dot filter. For each to-do, we want to filter out, and we only want to accept the ones where t.text does not equal to-do.text. And that to-do.text is coming from the to-do that we're passing into complete to-do. So now we're filtering out that one, adding it back in as the updated version, and then doing this. Let's just see if it works. Unexpected token O in JSON. And that is coming from get initial to-dos, json.parse. Local storage, to-dos. So somewhere I've just got a small typo that I'm gonna have to work out or something. So bear with me while I figure that out. Oh, it's not gonna let me look at that. Bummer. Or completed false, so they're all still that. And to do, by the way, we're gonna say to do, text is to do.text, and completed is equal to not to do.completed. So we're gonna flip the completed property before we save it back in there. That's not gonna fix this bug, but I just remembered we need to do that. The bug, let me maximize this and see if we can find it. So let's start from the bottom and go up. Let's start all the way at to-do item. So we pass in an object to complete to-do, which is, this needs to be completed, not complete. Potentially that could have been it. Let's find out. It looks like I actually messed up my local storage, so I need to actually clear it. Which makes me realize that I think I know what I messed up. Indeed, I forgot to JSON.stringify this. That is extremely important, folks. All right, let's see what happens. So learn Vue.js, and let's say complete tutorial, and let's cross out complete tutorial. All right, so that's cool. What happens if I refresh it? Is it still there? Perfect. If I click it, does it undo it? I mean, that's a to-do app, right? Here, let's do one more. This is just a test. And one thing that we could eventually do in the future is make sure that things stay in order regardless of whether or not it's completed, but I don't think we want to do that. I think we would want to have all the to-dos that are completed at the bottom and all the ones that aren't completed at the top, but that's not necessarily something I want to do in this live stream. But I think that's it. It's a very simple to-do app. I built it using Vue.js, never having even read Vue.js code before, so I feel like I accomplished my goal. All right, so I'm going to call that a day, and I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, thumb it up, subscribe if you haven't. See you all in my upcoming tutorial.